You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. On the program today, we are focused on the roots of medical cannabis reform. A lot of people are unaware that the medical cannabis movement goes all the way back to the late 1950s, early 1960s, especially when you're talking about this pioneer in the field of medical cannabis research, Dr. Lester Grinspoon. And I also have the opportunity to have Al Byrne today as our joint host. Al and Dr. Grinspoon are old friends, and that way I thought Dr. Grinspoon would feel at home, and the audience would benefit from Al's background and knowledge of Dr. Grinspoon to get a handful of excellent questions so that we would be able to learn more about this remarkable man.
This is Al Byrne. So just for the listening audience, Dr. Grinspoon is an icon here in the United States, not only for his medical cannabis knowledge and how he has passed it on to literally millions of us, but also for his leadership. It is a pleasure to have you here, sir. And I was wondering then, sir, if you could give the audience just a short background of your, how you get into medicine and why, and what brought you into the medical cannabis arena, if you would, sir.
Well, I was always interested in medicine as long as I can remember, and I went to medical school, Harvard Medical School, with the idea of becoming a surgeon, an idea I soon abandoned. When I graduated from medical school, I did a residency in psychiatry, and during that time, I was involved in anti-Vietnam War activities very early, in 1966, and it was then that I met Sagan. He and I became very close friends, and we met because we were involved in the anti-Vietnam War movement, and that then flourished into a very close, lifelong relationship.
Okay, you're referring to Carl Sagan, are you not, sir? And could you just tell folks in general who Mr. Sagan was? Again, we have an international audience.
Right. Carl Sagan was an astronomer who taught at Cornell, but he was also very well known as someone who could explain science to lay people beautifully, and had a series called Cosmos, which was reviewed. At any rate, the point is, as we got closer, I became privy to the fact that he smoked marijuana. Now, I had never seen a marijuana joint before, let alone anybody who used them. And I was astonished, and I would say to him, Carl, you ought to give this up because it's very harmful. And he would take the joint from his mouth and hold it toward me and say, Lester, try it. You'll find it's harmless. And as I met more people in his circle, none of them unsophisticated. I would say almost all of them smoked marijuana. I began to question my assumptions. Where did I get the understanding that it was so harmful? Now, mind you, this was long before drug-free America and so forth. And it was clear that my understanding came from the U.S. government. I decided to go into the library to really try to find the medical and scientific basis from this dastardly prohibition, which in 1967, when I got started on this in earnest, was responsible for 300,000 arrests every year. It peaked in 2011 with almost 900,000. That's 89% from mere possession. Most of these arrestees were young. If it didn't involve some harsh punishment like prison, it certainly messed up the careers of these people. I had an epiphany in the library as I came to understand that I had been 180 degrees wrong about marijuana, that it was indeed among the safest drugs that we know of. Nobody has ever died from a marijuana overdose or any other facet of marijuana. And so I then ultimately published a piece in Scientific American, which attracted a lot of attention. 3 publishers came to my office. I had no intention of writing a book, but I finally decided to do a book with Harvard University Press, and that book was was the first of my books on marijuana. Marijuana Reconsidered was published in 1971. And I became more and more interested in it, and became what is known in academic circles as an marijuana activist, and I have been that since the 70s.
Doctor, I wonder, did you have any question about whether it would be harmful to the id and the ego?
To the id and the ego. Well, I had no question that it was not harmful to the id or the ego. It might induce, the reason people use it recreationally is because they seek the slight alteration in consciousness that it provides, and it is in fact, I think it's probably the best of the so-called recreational drugs. It doesn't leave a hangover. It is not toxic, and it's a catalyst of sociability. So I think for all these reasons, it's accepted as a recreational drug. Now, I soon came to understand that there was a second purpose, and that is medicine. And the second book I did on this is called Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine. And that came out in 93. There was a second edition. That was Yale University Press. Second edition in 97. And that clearly established it as a remarkable medicine which is very much underused for legal reasons, and also because allopathic medicine is the name of the medicine which describes modern Western medicine. Allopathic medicine has pretty much ignored it. I should also say that I thought, after I started using it myself, something I didn't do while I was writing the book, and I was, once I finished Marijuana Reconsidered, it was, I was asked to testify at many hearings in the Congress and around the country and in court cases, and I correctly anticipated this while I made the decision that I was going to use it eventually, but I didn't want to use it because I was afraid that the people asking questions would ask, "Doctor, have you ever used marijuana?" And I wanted to be able to answer truthfully, no. And so, because I was afraid if I had used it and had to answer yes, it might be seen as something that could be used to undermine my testimony.
Yeah, Doctor. But Doctor, I was wondering if you could tell us when you graduated from medical school and how much education about medical cannabis or the endocannabinoid system you received in medical school.
All right. Well, I graduated from medical school in 1955. Medical school, the word cannabis or marijuana was never mentioned, or at least if it was, I must have been asleep at the switch. None of my classmates knew anything about it either. So the medical education about cannabis was non-existent then. As for the endocannabinoid system, it hadn't been invented. I went to medical school from 1951 to 55. The endocannabinoid system didn't begin to take shape until the 1990s with the discovery of neurotransmitters and the receptors.
As you were working your way out of med school into the clinical world and doing your own research, you found that cannabis had several uses, not just one or two, one being recreational, two being medical, but you found a third use. Is that not right?
Yes. After I started to use it myself when I was 44 years old, I soon discovered what my friend Carl Sagan had made evident to me and a few other people, that it is also something which, not for casual, not for people who just take it once a week as a social thing, but people who, and only do it for a few years, but people who get more experience with it have the possibility of learning that it can enhance a variety of human capacities. For example, some of them come for free. When you get high on cannabis, a ordinary meal will seem like a culinary delight. It enhances the sense of taste and appetite. It also, for anybody who's had experience with cannabis, will know without any effort that it enhances the sexual experience. So I was just going to say that my third category of usefulness is enhancement of a variety of human capacities.
You had quite a reputation, sir, at Harvard University in Boston. So you're surprising me a little bit, but Harvard's pretty conservative, and you were doing well there. But I know, and I would like you to tell our listeners, please, that you ran into a little trouble there, didn't you? Yes.
The book Marijuana Reconsidered came out in '71, as I said, and it was actually my second book. My first book was on schizophrenia. The second one was Marijuana Reconsidered. And a couple of years after that, I was told by my chief, Dr. Jack Ewald, that he was putting me up for early promotion to full professorship. That, of course, was very exciting to me. And to make a long story short, about a month or two later, he came back. He was on the promotions committee. He came back, called me to his office, and I saw in his face that something had gone wrong. And he said, "They turned you down." And I said, "They did?" I was surprised. And he said, "Yes, they turned you down." I asked him why. And he said to me that, they liked your other work. I had published about 75 papers by that time. And they loved the book on schizophrenia, but they hated Marijuana Reconsidered. And I said, "They hated it?" He said, "Yes." I asked him why, and he said, "They thought it was too controversial." And I said, "My goodness, what?" Not exactly those words. Aren't we in the academy? What do they think of the scholarship? What does the fact that it's controversial have to do with it? And he held up his hands and said, hey, I'm just the messenger. I'm just the messenger. And that was the end of that conversation, except as as I was leaving his office, he said, "They asked me to ask you what you're planning to do in the future." And I, just off the top of my head, said, well, I'm an intellectual will-o'-the-wisp, and I can't answer that. That wasn't quite true, because I had already begun on the amphetamine book, which was also published by Harvard University Press, and it was the basis of Senator Gaylord Nelson's holding hearings on amphetamines in the Senate, and those hearings were ultimately responsible for the regulations that compelled physicians and other people to be more sanguine about using amphetamines. You have no idea how frequently they were used up until the mid-70s. About 21 years later, in 1995 or 96, after I had just announced that I was going to become emeritus in 2000, that's like retiring, and that may have stimulated some. I didn't know anything about this. Some people on the promotions committee apparently decided after more than 20 years that they should reconsider whether I should get the full professorship. And then I heard, not directly from them, via the grapevine, that it had been passed, and it was up to my chief to sign off on it. He signed off, but the super chief at Harvard, who resided at another hospital and who had trouble with, apparently, with my book on psychedelics and a few other things, he refused to sign it, and after about 7 months said that, or after a couple of months, in the first of the year, he told my chief he was going to wait for the new dean to come to Harvard Medical School, and that was off on July 1st, and that was months and months later, because he felt the new dean should co-sign it as though I were promoting Darwinism, and you know, he felt creationism should be represented. At any rate, the new dean joined him without even knowing me, not even calling me, not asking me over to his office, and not even informing me. I heard via my chief that he had vetoed, the two of them had vetoed my promotion. Well, I gave a lecture recently at Harvard Medical School. They haven't asked me to do that for all this time, but they had to have someone who would present the opposing view. And I can tell you I wrote about that in that paper called Harvard Marijuana and Me, which you saw. You know, the two older people in that big audience got up and gave little diatribes about how ill-informed I was about marijuana, whereas the younger people were very enthusiastic about the lecture. You know, it made me think what I've thought many times before, that it won't be until after my generation dies out that allopathic medicine will, including what, you know, as it's taught in medical schools, will get rid of its very antediluvian views of cannabis. There's also a kind of systemic problem because, you know, in medical school we learn about the principles of pharmacology, including psychopharmacology, but you don't learn much about all the individual drugs that are out there, and certainly not the ones that have come along after you're out of medicine. That you get from journals and from drug advertising. The journal papers on drugs are usually financed by the pharmaceutical industry. So without the pharmaceutical industry being involved in this, and they can't be involved, they can't patent a plant, so they can try to develop analogs of cannabinoids that might be useful. Some of them already have, like Marinol has some use, but not much. The doctors are used to getting their clues about new pharmaceuticals from the medical journals which pass it on from the pharmaceutical industry. And that, without that, I think it's difficult to make a dent.
You know, the government tries to sell us synthetic cannabis, one particular compound, THC, called Marinol. Now other people are coming up with CBD oil. Now, those products to me are inferior. I think you agree with me. Could you explain why we're right?
Yes. You know, I was excited when someone from the FDA I know called me in, I think it was 1985, and said, Dr. Grinspoon, you can stop pushing marijuana as a medicine because the U.S. government is supporting a small drug company in the development of a synthetic tetrahydrocannabinol. Now, what they came up with was called the proprietary name is Marinol, and it's the same 21 carbon molecule, the THC, that you get naturally from the plant. And they put it on the market, and you know, I began to I was very excited about it at first, but then as I got feedback from people who used it, I did not come across a single patient who, when I asked them how was it, patient who had used plant marijuana, smoked marijuana, or ingested the natural marijuana, and it also used Marinol, they said it's not nearly as good as whole natural marijuana. And that puzzled me, as it did many people, because we were naively believed at that time that the therapeutic as well as the recreational properties of cannabis resided in tetrahydrocannabinol. Well, to skip ahead now, we know that that's wrong. Let me just tell you where we are with that now. We've now rediscovered or discovered another cannabinoid called cannabidiol, or CBD. And this cannabinoid existed by the time we discovered how useful it was medically. It was the percentage had shrunk in the marijuana plants, that strains that had been developed for high THC, because in the 60s, starting in the 60s, there was so much demand for the kind of marijuana that would get one high. The growers in the Netherlands, in Western Canada, BC particularly, and Northern California were all trying to develop strains which would have very high THC levels. And they've not now gotten up to strains. Well, for example, one of the highest is the one that's named after me, Dr. Grinspoon, in Europe, and it's 25% THC. We were used in the 60s, maybe 3, 4, 5%, and, you know, up until recent years, strains that were maybe up to 15%. But now they're way up there. Now the problem has been that as the THC goes up, the CBD, the cannabidiol, goes down. We now know that the best medicine is a mixture of THC, cannabidiol, and a phytochemical from the plant called a group called the terpenes. This is what I call the ensemble, the necessary ensemble for medical use. The part that is most important is the ratio. It's got to have terpenes, this ensemble. But what is manipulable, and it's very important, is the ratio of THC to CBD. If you take a drug which has a high ratio, that is, CBD is much higher than THC, let's say something like, for example, the stuff that is used in Dravet syndrome. These are little children who have multiple, almost continuous epileptic fits. That was first discovered with a strain that was something like 20 parts of CBD to 3 parts of THC. And nowadays, we know that if you have something which is that high in CBD and that low in THC, It's a great medicine, but it's not what you want to use to get high. If you want to get high, the ratio has to be reversed. It doesn't have to be 20-3, but you have to use something which is high in THC and low in CBD. If you try to use a CBD level ensemble and then want to get high, you will find it much more difficult.
Doctor, two questions. If I could get two questions in here to help me and everybody understand. If someone is a recreational user and they have a high level of THC, modern times, I don't know, pick a number, 20% THC, it's not necessarily going to harm them. What I would say an experienced recreational smoker would simply take less of that product in order to get where they wanted to go. That would be my first question. Did I make that assumption correctly?
That's absolutely right. You see, especially if one smokes it, the effect comes on so rapidly. This is the first instance where one can titrate the dose, because, when I tell a new patient who doesn't know just what that ratio is, I'll say, look, take one puff and just wait a minute or two. The joint or whatever it is, your pipe, whatever will go out, that's okay. Light it again, a couple of minutes later, take another joint. And do that until either you begin to feel that the nausea you're trying to treat is receding, or you're starting to get anxious, in which case, in either case, you stop. And that's how I teach people to use it, particularly in strains where they have no idea how much THC there is, let alone how much the CBD there is.
That goes to my second question for the folks listening. This ratio, THC, CBD, terpenes, but I'm asking the question, but I am assuming, sir, that you are saying that the medicine should be made from whole plant material, that no compounds should be left out, and they shouldn't be synthetic. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct. I think that smoked marijuana, and there's no harm to smoking marijuana. That we don't even have to talk about, to the lungs. Absolutely none. But if you don't like smoking, we live in an anti-smoking culture. You can use what's called a vaporizer, which will separate out the cannabinoids from the plant, and you won't inhale any products from burning a plant. The important point is that only the smoking the bud or eating the bud will guarantee that you get the terpenes. With the oils, maybe somebody will come out with an oil that tells you exactly what's in it. But so far, I say that the ultimate medicine here is from the bud. And I think, for the time being, smoking either with or without a vaporizer is the best way to use it as a medicine or for anything else. Because even if you don't know the potency, if you're smart, you'll titrate it. So you get to know roughly how many puffs of this grass you should use to get the desired effect. People don't want to get higher than they want to get. They know where they want to get, and this is the way to do it. Similarly, as a medicine, people know when the nausea goes away or the pain goes away or whatever it is they're using it for medically, and they are the best judges of dose. And I think it's great that people can, doctors give you pills, but, they don't know whether they're right on target or below target or above target. With most of it, there's enough of a leeway in terms of the ratio or the amount that it would take to achieve toxicity. They err on the side of giving you more than you need, but not to the point where it's toxic.
What's your take on the use of cannabis for post-traumatic stress?
I think it is the best medicinal choice for people who suffer from PTSD. It's no accident that lots of the young men who went to Vietnam came back having discovered cannabis. It should be used routinely, but I've seen enough of these people to know they should be allowed to use this. It's a great medicine for PTSD. You know, there are many myths about marijuana. One of them was the amotivational syndrome, and that is just what you call it, a myth. For example, I go back to my personal experience here because it's the best. You know, Carl Sagan, he was the hardest working man I've ever met. I mean, he was always working. You know, he carried around a little tape recorder to record things that he wanted to write and so forth when he got ideas. And he was a user of cannabis, and he felt it was helpful to him. So I just don't. You know, cannabis can be used by people who are averse to work or can't figure out what it is they want to do with their lives. And without this kind of motivation, they sit around and they smoke grass. And people have in the past, at any rate, seen the grass as responsible for their hanging out ways. But it's not.
Doctor, again, thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you again, sir.
Dr. Grinspoon, it has been an honor, and Al, as always, it has been a joy to have you as a joint host here on the big broadcast, and I want to thank you for tuning in out there. Please share us with your friends, and remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for him. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, time for help! Yeah!
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at Pace Radio.